Hello and welcome to the Sunshine Cathedral. The Sunshine Cathedral is a different kind of church where the past is past and the future has infinite possibilities. And with that, we invite you to come and worship with us here on Sunday mornings at 9 and 10:30 a.m. at 1480 Southwest 9th Avenue. Now, I invite you to come in and worship with us here at the Sunshine Cathedral.
Our first reading today is from the book of Acts. When Peter went up to Jerusalem, the circumcised believers criticized him, saying, "Why did you go to uncircumcised men and eat with them?" Then Peter began to explain it to them, step by step, saying, "The Spirit told me to go with them and not make a distinction between them and us." In these human words, God's voice is heard. Our second reading this morning is from the Wisdom of Ernest Holmes. We believe in God as the infinite Spirit permeating everything.
Our third reading is from the book of Revelation. See, the home of God is among mortals. God dwells with them. They will be God's peoples, and God will be with them to wipe every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the first things have passed away. In these human words, God's voice is heard.
God is with you. And also with you. A reading from the Gospel according to Matthew. Glory to you, Jesus said, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." This is the gospel, the good news.
The good news, of course, is that there is resurrection, there is renewal, there is new hope, there is new life, there are second chances, and all of that is amazing and wonderful and miraculous. But it means that something else has happened. You can't get up unless you've been knocked down. You don't need to be renewed unless you have been depleted. You don't need to have a second chance unless the first one didn't work out very well. And so it's a mixed bag. Yes, it's great. It's a new day, and the new day brings wonderful possibilities. But it's also healing from the day that's passed. And so it's a mixed bag. That it's great, but it's great because we needed greatness so badly. Growing up, there was a song I often heard at funerals. I didn't grow up in a metropolitan area, and I know that is stunning for you to realize because I'm such an urbanite now. I seem so cosmopolitan, but growing up in very rural circumstances, things were very different than when I lived in Dallas and New York and Fort Lauderdale. And so we would go to, there were a handful of churches, and no matter what denomination you were, you wound up in everyone's church because you funerals and weddings and that sort of thing. And what I noticed is that at all the Protestant churches, this song would be heard at funerals very, very frequently. It would always be a solo. It would always be a woman. And so one woman, usually standing at the head of a casket. I don't know the whole room. I don't know why she needed to stand there, but she always did. And she would sing. There are some things I may not know. There are some places I can't go. But I am sure of this one thing. My God is real, for I can feel God in my soul. Yes, God is real, real in my soul. My God is real and has renewed and made me whole. God's love for me is like pure gold. My God is real, for I can feel God in my soul. The thought of the presence of divine life within one's own life and even beyond physical life was meant to offer peace. And the miracle is it so often worked that people found comfort in those simple words. So much comfort that they sang it over and over again. During times of despair and grief, peace is needed most. And so how miraculous in those times to be able to affirm, I feel God in my soul. And how miraculous to be able to say it even when it doesn't feel true. When you feel alone and abandoned and you still say it. You fake it till you make it. I love that Moravian preacher who advised John Wesley, you preach faith until you have it. And then you preach faith because you have it. And so we can say it even when it seems ridiculous to say. And we keep saying it, and then eventually it's real for us. And we keep saying it because it feels true. We said it because we wanted it to be true, and then we kept saying it because we discovered that it was true. In my early 20s, when I discovered MCC, and the AIDS crisis was raging without much hope being offered yet by medical science, there was a song I frequently heard in worship, usually at communion, and it always brought peace, at least for a moment, to everyone who sang and heard it. The congregation would sing it all at once. There were no words on the screen, none in the bulletin. It just sort of happened magically, and everyone knew it, and everyone was waiting for it. And it would happen. It was a prayer. It was an invocation. It was an affirmation. And it was a moment of healing where all at once everyone would sing, surely the presence of our God is in this place. I can feel her mighty power and his grace. I can hear the brush of angel wings. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of our God is in this place. To acknowledge the divine presence. To know, as Emerson said, that we are part and parcel of God. To know, as the Apostle Paul did, that nothing can separate us from the love that God is. To deeply feel, as Jesus did, that divine life is our life, that we are each one with God, is to experience peace that isn't dependent on and can't be diminished by the circumstances in life. The divine presence that is the source and substance of all life is affirmed in the Acts reading today. Now, it may be difficult to notice that at first. We get to the part where God shows no partiality. There's no difference between us and them, and we can all eat together and be together, and the divine spark is in all people. But it starts out talking about circumcision. And that seems an odd topic in church for us. And yet in those days, it was a primary topic because there was a big debate between Paul and Peter about how you could join the Jesus movement. And Peter and James, for that matter, were very convinced that the Jesus movement was a Jewish movement, and there's a piece of male body that needs to go to be part of a Jewish movement. Just a little piece, not much. You get rid of it when you're 8 days old so that you don't remember how horrible it is to get rid of it. And that's what distinguished us from them. And Paul decided, you know what, we shouldn't make people go through that pain just to be part of our movement. They don't have to get rid of that. They can just join the movement just because they like us and want to be part of us. Oh, it raged. And we still hear those arguments, don't we? You have to be baptized. You have to be baptized this way. You have to be baptized with this formula. You have to be baptized with this much water. I think Paul would just say, get over it. If they like us and want to be here, let's welcome them in. And so in that respect, strangely, I am Pauline. In any case, here in the Acts reading, as shocking as it is to see people discussing so openly physical bodies and body places that we don't normally talk about in mixed company, but our spiritual ancestors were less uptight about bodies than we may be today. And incarnational spirituality will naturally assume that bodies are good, that our bodies are good, and can be spoken of freely without shame. We should remember that our spiritual ancestors could name body parts without shame in spiritual discourse because they were talking about bodies that they believed were created by God and belonged to God. Why would God create and take ownership of something that was bad? And so God is the substance from which our bodies are made, so they are good. We may not always treat them well. We may not always appreciate them. We may not always see their beauty because we've been conditioned to think only certain types of bodies are beautiful. But bodies are part of God's creation, part of the creation called very good, part of the divine unity and wholeness of life. Perhaps even the post-biblical doctrine of the Trinity suggests that all life is one life, that all life is divine life, that there is the celestial source, but then there's also the human manifestation, and then there's also the presence that unites all things. The three in and as one imagery of the Trinity may well suggest the unity of all life. All one is all, and all is one. If there is one substance from which all life is made manifest, if it is true that there's not a spot where God is not, then divine life is the stuff of all life. The Revelation text today tells us that God is among and within all people. And because that presence is there, it is able to wipe away tears, to heal pain, to comfort and unite and strengthen and renew. And the gospel reading concurs that all people can come to the Christ consciousness, the awareness of one's unity with divine life, the recognition that God is omnipresent and therefore is inclusive of every life and is the life from which all lives are pressed out or made manifest. And so these are the scriptural words of comfort. Sometimes we think that our spirituality is flawed if we don't rub the magic lamp and the genie pops out and grants our wishes right away. Oh, what have I done wrong? How have I not gotten it right? We don't do that with any other thing in life. If the first round of chemo doesn't work, we do it again. If the first diet doesn't work, we do it again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again. If the first marriage doesn't work out, we do it again, and again, and again, and again. But somehow we think that if we just come to church once in a while and say a prayer now and again, that everything ought to just be smooth. Instead of saying, you know what, this may be one of those things we have to do again, and again, and again. And if we remain faithful, it will get better. There are no magic words or mystical moment in which all the problems of life are solved, and we become so happy that no burden or trial can get us down. But we have an example of one who did develop the Christ consciousness, an awareness of his unity with the divine presence, and we can return to that image and let it help us move more deeply into our own discovery of the divine presence in our lives. We can look to Jesus not as the human exception, but as the human example of what God's children can be and should be and ought to be, the example of what we can be and do. And then we discover that Christ in us, the hope of glory. There's not a spot where God is not, and yet we don't always feel that presence. When Jesus was being publicly persecuted and brutalized and tortured, while he still had breath, he started to pray there on the cross at Golgotha, the 22nd Psalm that begins, my God, why have you abandoned me? He had a moment where he forgot, or where he almost forgot, that there's not a spot where God is not. But the gospel writer suggests that he had a trick for how he could remember. He started to affirm. He started to do sing that song, God is real. I can feel God in my soul, and even when I don't feel it, I'm going to say I do anyway until I do. He started to pray the 22nd Psalm. The psalmist apparently thought that when things were hurtful and overwhelming in his life, that maybe God had forgotten him. And so he started to pray about it. And in fact, he prayed through it. And by the end of Psalm 22, the psalmist is praising God and affirming God's never-ending presence and goodness. Why have you abandoned me? Oh, here you are. Let me remember and rejoice in that. And so Jesus, it is imagined, in his moment of suffering, begins to pray the 22nd Psalm. My God, why have you abandoned me? Because of the pain, he isn't able to recite the whole psalm, but we can easily imagine Jesus reciting the whole piece in his mind, and then thinking with a smile that no one else could understand, oh, that's right, you haven't. You couldn't. You can't abandon me. You never will. There's not a spot where God is not. Even at Golgotha, God is present. And because God is present, this isn't the end of the story. And his friends insisted that those horrific moments at Golgotha did not end the Jesus story. And it certainly did not end the Jesus movement. Apparently there was hope beyond horror and peace beyond pain. That's resurrection. Once when St. Teresa was having a particularly bad day, she turned to prayer as one might. And she prayed, God, if this is how you treat your friends, no wonder you have so few of them. Even such a prayer of exasperation affirms the closeness of the divine presence, a trust that the divine can be played with and accessed. And I'm sure the grin that such an irreverent prayer brought to St. Teresa's face was nothing less than the healing touch of God helping her face the challenges at hand. Oneness, or divine unity, is affirmed in each of our texts this morning, and such unity with the divine assures us of our sacred value and innate goodness. This realization can bring peace beyond pain. Someone once said, peace is not the absence of affliction, but the presence of God. Let's say that together. Peace is not the absence of affliction, but the presence of God. Experiences come and go, and often seem beyond our control, but difficulties can't rob us of our sacred value, nor can they separate us from our divine source. That offers us the encouragement we need to move through the difficulty and to know that better days are on the way. God is good and God is omnipresent, so anything unlike God can't be permanent, can't be ultimately real, and that gives us the hope we need to continue moving forward to claim the life that is ours by divine right. 12th century Christian mystic Hildegard of Bingen said, "There is no one in whom the divine is missing." There is no one in whom the divine is missing. And Alexander Pope wrote, "All are but parts of one stupendous whole, whose body nature is, and God the soul." Mine is neither a doctrinal nor a dogmatic faith. My theology is pretty simple. It's just that God is omnipresent, is indeed omnipresence itself. God is the only true presence, filling all space, serving as the substance of all that exists, enfolding and flowing through and expressing as all life. In short, there's not a spot where God is not. Neither creed, nor sacrament, nor religious affiliation is needed to access the divine presence. Religion is a human invention, and it's a tool for us to use for comfort and community, empowerment and fulfillment. But as Jesus said, religious observances, the Sabbath, he said, religious observances are made for us, not we for them. Religion isn't a key that unlocks the door to God's presence. There is no door between us and God. There's not a spot where God is not. Religion at its best doesn't help us find God. It helps us wake up to the truth that God was with us all the time. My God is real, for I can feel God in my soul. When we don't recognize the divine presence, we invent dramas and nightmares, wars and crime, abuse and loneliness. We invent distractions to keep us from communing with the one all. And then we fear that the dramas we've created are real, and God is an illusion. But it is exactly the other way around. That's why Anne Frank, martyr of the Nazi reign of terror, could say, "I don't think of all the misery, but of all the beauty that still remains." Life was difficult for that young girl who would never get to grow old, and yet she somehow experienced peace beyond pain. She somehow knew that even in the midst of her suffering, the infinite goodness that we call God was still present, and focusing on that presence gave her a peace that passes understanding, peace beyond pain. Alice Walker's novel, The Color Purple, was made into a movie and a Broadway musical, which means for me it is a holy text. Could only be better if it was a drag review. And in each of the tellings of the story, there is a now famous moment when two African American women living in the Jim Crow era South are sharing their hopes and disappointments during a private moment. And if we read the text carefully, we see they have lots of very special private moments. One of them is in an abusive relationship and longs to get out. She also had a very difficult childhood, and so really her life has been filled with suffering for a very long time. And so she's frustrated with God and calls God trifling and low down. And in the musical version, her friend tells her, "Oh, I'll admit, God seems to be taking God's time getting to you, but look at all that God has given us." And then she rattles off a list of blessings that even the most wounded or disappointed person would have to acknowledge. And then she tells her hurting friend, "I think it pisses God off if you'll walk by the color purple in a field somewhere and don't notice it." And that's the point, isn't it? The mean stuff, the hurtful stuff, the unfair stuff, the unjust stuff, that isn't God. God isn't the bomb in Boston. God is the people rushing to help the ones who are hurt. God isn't the explosion in Texas. God is the wind diminishing the damage. God isn't the homophobic legislation demonizing people. God is 10 states and the District of Columbia and 2 Native American tribes and 12 countries around the world that have marriage equality. God isn't the disease that took a loved one. God is the blessed memories that keep our loved ones alive in our hearts. God is infinite life, and in God, all are alive forever. Do we dare to look past the appearance of discord to see the truth of God's loving presence? If so, we will have peace beyond pain. Even when the world seems to be coming apart at the seams, will we dare to still notice the color purple, the goodness that no amount of difficulty can take away? In the musical version of The Color Purple, the woman who is in so much pain, Celie, is given words of comfort from her friend Shug. And Shug tells her that God isn't a mean man in the sky, that really God isn't a man at all. Rather like Jesus saying, God is spirit. And Shug offers her a broader concept of God to comfort her in her time of pain. Shug tells her, God is inside you and everyone else that was or ever will be. We come into this world with God, but only them who look inside find it. God is the flowers and everything else that was or ever will be. And when you feel the truth so real, and when you love the way you feel, you found it. The omnipresent God, the God that neither sins pain nor is limited by it, awareness of and focus on that reality is what offers peace beyond pain. That is resurrection power. And this is the good news. Amen. I so want to be able to take people's pain away. And I just don't have the skill. As much as I sort of want to have this codependent need to try to fix everyone else, I can't do it. I used to have a t-shirt that said, I'll be codependent if you want me to be. But I can't take away your pain, and you can't take away mine. But I can affirm you, and I can encourage you, and I can believe with you that the pain is not your purpose and it's not the end of your story. That, yes, you seem to be down, but I believe you can get back up. Yes, things are difficult, but I believe that there is joy still to be had. I believe there is hope beyond horror and peace beyond pain. If that is good news for you today, then ministers are coming forward now to anoint us with oil. It's a simple ritual, a simple reminder that right where we are, God is. God will never let us go, could never let us go. God is our life. And so as long as we are, God is. And as long as God is, we are. We are forever in the embrace of that eternal and universal love that we call God. And when we remember that, then we can go to peace instead of to pieces. And that sometimes is the best miracle possible. If you need that miracle, I believe it's available to you today. And so I invite you to rise as you're able and come forward as you will. We'll stand around this altar supporting each other and giving miracles a chance.
On the night you were betrayed, you took the bread. After giving thanks, you broke it and said, "This is my body, open to you. And as you eat this, remember me."
This is my body, open to you. And as you eat this, remember me.
On the night you were betrayed, you held the cup. After giving thanks, you lifted it up. This is my life, poured out for you. And as you drink this, remember me. This is my life, poured out for you. And as you So we thank you for the wine and for the bread. We recall the life you lived and the truth that you spread. In God our Maker, oh heavenly dove, in Christ we celebrate your wondrous love. And God our Maker, oh heavenly dove, in Christ we celebrate your wondrous love.
Here at the Sunshine Cathedral, we practice an open communion. And what that means is you don't have to be a member of this church or any church to receive the sacrament. Just as you are, with whatever your beliefs or doubts may be, you are welcome to participate in this feast of unconditional love. My friends, these are the gifts of God for all the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Hello, I want to thank you for joining us for worship today here at the Sunshine Cathedral. Again, if you're ever in the Fort Lauderdale area, please stop by and worship with us on Sundays at 9 and 10:30 a.m. If you'd like to find out more about the Sunshine Cathedral, about our resources, or about our books published by our senior pastor, the Reverend Dr. Durrell Watkins, or if you'd like to make a donation to the Sunshine Cathedral, please visit us at www.sunshinecathedral.org. Until the next time, may God continue to richly bless you on your journey.